What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is what you refuse to let go of? Most people spend their entire lives chasing success, reading books, watching videos, repeating affirmations, yet they never get any closer to real wealth. Not because they aren't smart, not because they aren't capable, but because they never stop doing the things that hold them back. It's not just about what you do right, it's about what you stop doing wrong. That's the part no one talks about. That's the truth that stings. We're taught to add more to our lives, more goals, more strategies, more tools. But real success, real transformation doesn't begin when you do more. It begins when you let go. Let go of the habits that drain you, the beliefs that shrink you, the actions that betray your future. Every step toward wealth is a decision to stop tolerating what no longer serves you. But most people won't make that decision because it's easier to keep doing what's comfortable, even if it's killing your potential. It's easier to keep blaming circumstances, timing, the economy, or your past than to take full ownership. It's easier to say someday than to face the truth that your daily decisions are shaping your destiny right now, whether you see it or not. And the truth is, the line between the rich and the broke isn't drawn by luck. It's drawn by patterns, mindless, repeated, destructive patterns that trap you in the life you say you don't want, but keep choosing every day. The patterns that look harmless on the surface, but are silently destroying your chances. Things like procrastinating on your goals, avoiding hard conversations, saying yes to things you don't believe in, spending money to feel better instead of getting better. These don't feel dangerous, but they are. Because every small compromise becomes a habit, and every habit becomes your identity. And once you identify as someone who tries but never finishes, or starts but never commits, or wants more but settles for less, you begin to live in a cage with the door wide open. You tell yourself stories like, I'm doing my best, or it's just not the right time. But deep down, you know you were made for more. You feel it every time you look around and realize life isn't turning out the way you imagined. You feel it when you watch others rise and wonder why it hasn't happened for you. Here's the truth. Success doesn't wait for permission, and wealth doesn't come to the most deserving. It comes to the most disciplined, the most focused, the most honest with themselves. If you want to become rich, not just in money, but in freedom, in purpose, in power, then you have to get serious about what you allow in your life. You have to look in the mirror and ask the hard question, what am I doing that's keeping me broke? Not just financially, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You see, most people don't fail because they lack knowledge. They fail because they lack clarity. They don't know what they're doing wrong, or worse, they do know, but they keep doing it anyway. They think a better future will just appear without changing anything in the present. But nothing changes until you do. And that's why this message matters. Because you don't need to learn more. You need to stop doing what's keeping you stuck. The power is already inside you. The hunger, the vision, the ability, it's all there. But it's being suffocated by distraction, comfort, fear, and denial. Imagine who you'd become if you stopped feeding the habits that weaken you. Imagine what you could build if you stopped listening to fear and started trusting your own potential. Imagine the freedom, the pride, the clarity you'd feel, waking up every day knowing you're finally becoming who you were meant to be. This isn't about quick wins or shortcuts. It's about eliminating the silent enemies that are stealing your future one day at a time. Because once you see them clearly, you can't unsee them. And once you stop doing what breaks you, you finally create space for what builds you. Stay with this message until the end, because if you've ever felt stuck, lost, or behind in life, what you'll hear might be the wake-up call you've been needing. Not for inspiration that fades by tomorrow, but for decisions that change everything. It's time to stop settling for almost. It's time to stop pretending you don't know what's holding you back. It's time to remove what doesn't belong, so the life you do want can finally show up, not someday, but now. And that's where most people fall, the moment they know what's wrong, but still choose not to change. Not because they enjoy the pain of being stuck, but because they've gotten used to it. They've learned to cope with mediocrity, to dress it up with distractions, to explain it away with excuses. But you weren't born to cope. You were born to create. And until you break free from the patterns that normalize a limited life, wealth will always be out of reach, not because it's impossible, but because you've been trained to tolerate less. You can't fix a problem you defend. And most people defend the very behaviors that hold them back. They say things like, I'm just not good with money, that's just who I am, or I'll start when I feel ready. But these aren't truths. They're chains. Beliefs passed down by those who gave up on more. And unless you challenge them, confront them, replace them, you will carry them. Not by choice, but by default. And that default setting will always lead you to an average life. What you allow, you reinforce. And every time you let yourself off the hook, every time you know better but don't do better, you're voting against your future. Every day you put off the hard thing, the right thing, the necessary thing, you deepen the habit of hesitation. And hesitation is the enemy of all achievement. It doesn't look dangerous. It feels harmless. But it slowly turns potential into regret. And by the time you wake up, years are gone. That's the real cost. Not just the money you never made. It's the dreams you buried, the confidence you lost, the self-respect you sacrificed just to stay comfortable. That's the pain people don't talk about, the invisible weight of knowing you're capable of more, but never seeing it come to life. Not because you weren't given the chance, but because you didn't eliminate the distractions that were stealing it from you. Look at your life honestly. Where are you choosing comfort over growth? Where are you staying silent when you should speak up? Where are you wasting hours every day convincing yourself that tomorrow is a better time to begin? Because the gap between where you are and where you want to be is filled with small daily decisions. And every one of those decisions is either moving you forward or pulling you back. There is no neutral. Every action is a vote for the future you're building. Most people want to be rich, but they act like someone who's scared to change. They want the rewards without the responsibility. They want freedom without sacrifice. They want success without becoming someone new. But wealth isn't something you get. It's something you grow into. It doesn't arrive when you get lucky. It arrives when you outgrow the patterns that keep you broke, mentally, emotionally, financially, and those patterns don't break themselves. You have to choose to be different. Not once, every day. You have to choose to guard your time like your life depends on it, because it does. You have to stop saying yes to every distraction, every comfort, every meaningless demand on your energy. You have to say no more often, not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. Because the version of you that becomes wealthy isn't scattered. They're focused, obsessed with growth, relentless about what they allow in their life. If you want more, you need to become more. Not in some grand dramatic way, but in the quiet moments when no one's watching. When you choose to read instead of scroll. When you wake up early instead of sleeping in. And when you invest instead of spend. When you confront your fears instead of hide behind them. These are the invisible wins that no one applauds, but they're the ones that build everything. The world won't reward your potential. It only rewards your discipline, your focus, your consistency. And if you're not building that now, don't expect to have it when the opportunity comes. Because opportunity doesn't wait. It doesn't knock twice. And when it shows up, it only stays for those who are ready. So ask yourself this: who are you becoming? Not who you wish you were, not who you pretend to be when people are watching, but who are you really becoming based on the choices you're making every single day? Because your future isn't determined by a moment of inspiration. It's determined by the habits you practice when no one sees. And those habits start by removing what doesn't belong. Remove the excuses. Remove the distractions. Remove the behaviors that don't align with who you say you want to be. And keep removing until nothing is left but clarity, courage, and forward motion. The future doesn't wait for the perfect plan. It waits for a committed mind. And once you become that person, the one who no longer tolerates what weakens them, you'll realize that wealth was never about luck or chance. It was always about choice. Most people spend their lives reacting to problems, reacting to bills, reacting to other people's expectations. They move through life in survival mode, always one step behind, always waiting for something to change, without realizing that nothing truly changes until they do. They don't lead their life. They follow it. They don't create their future. They inherit whatever's left over after distraction, fear, and procrastination take their share. But if you want to build wealth, real wealth, you can't live that way. You can't live by default. You have to live by design. Wealth is not just about making money. It's about building a life that's in alignment with your deepest values. A life where your time is yours, where you choose what to work on, who to work with, and how you show up. But that kind of life doesn't happen by accident. It's built decision by decision on a foundation of clarity and intention. And most of all, it's built by eliminating everything that isn't aligned, because what you tolerate becomes your standard, and your standards shape your life. If you tolerate distractions, you'll build a distracted life. If you tolerate laziness, you'll build a life of missed chances. If you tolerate complaining, you'll attract more reasons to stay stuck. Every single thing you allow, every little exception you make, becomes the blueprint of who you are becoming. And wealth doesn't live in low standards. It lives in discipline, in self-respect, in the quiet daily decisions that say, I want more and I'm willing to earn it. The truth is, everyone wants freedom. But most people are addicted to habits that make freedom impossible. You can't build independence while chasing validation. You can't build focus while giving your attention to things that don't move you forward. You can't build wealth while spending everything you earn to feel temporary comfort. And you definitely can't rise while dragging the dead weight of past excuses behind you. This isn't about perfection. It's about alignment. It's about saying yes to what strengthens you and no to what weakens you. It's about recognizing that every distraction comes with a cost. Every excuse you allow has a price tag. And the longer you delay change, the deeper the debt becomes. Mentally, emotionally, financially. You can't keep planting seeds of chaos and expect a harvest of peace. You can't keep feeding yourself lies and expect to walk in truth. The life you want is built by the things you stop doing just as much as the things you start. And that's why most people stay stuck, because it's easier to add than subtract. It's easier to download another app, start another goal, chase another idea, than to pause and ask what needs to go. Real growth begins with removal, removing distractions, removing bad influences, removing habits that keep you small. And that kind of removal is painful because it forces you to look at the gap between who you are and who you could be. It forces you to take full responsibility. And responsibility is the gateway to power, but it's also the thing most people avoid because it's hard to admit that your life is the result of your choices. It's hard to say, I've been playing small. It's hard to look in the mirror and see the truth without filters, without blame, without denial. But that's where transformation begins. Not in a podcast, not in a quote, but in that raw moment where you realize that everything can change if you're willing to. So ask yourself, are you really doing what it takes? Or are you just doing what's comfortable? Are you building wealth? Or just hoping it shows up while you live on autopilot? Because no one accidentally builds a powerful life. It takes focus, it takes courage, and it takes a relentless refusal to settle. You don't need more motivation. You need more integrity with yourself. The discipline to do what you said you would do. The maturity to stay committed when it's no longer exciting. The self-respect to walk away from things that no longer reflect who you're becoming. And yes, that means letting go of a few things, letting go of the old version of you that made excuses, letting go of the friends who don't want growth, letting go of the crutches you've leaned on to avoid becoming strong. Because every time you hold on to what's easy, you delay what's extraordinary. The most dangerous lie you can believe is that you have time, that you can keep living like this and somehow still reach the life you dream about. But time doesn't pause for indecision. It moves forward with or without your permission. And if you don't decide who you want to be, the world will decide for you. Don't let that happen. You've been given something priceless: choice, the ability to shape your thoughts, your habits, your surroundings, your actions, the ability to become someone who lives with purpose, who leads with discipline, who earns their freedom one step at a time. But it starts with removing the things that don't belong, not later, not someday, now. Because if you don't remove what's breaking you, you'll never create what can build you. And once you do, everything changes. Most people never experience what they're truly capable of, not because they lack talent, but because they never learn how to stay out of their own way. They build momentum and then break it. They take a step forward, then second guess it. They speak their goals into existence and then drown them with the same old habits. It's not the world that stops them. It's themselves. They don't need more time, more help, more motivation. They need fewer self-inflicted limitations. That's the hard truth. The greatest enemy of your potential isn't failure. It's comfort. It's the false safety of routine, the quiet addiction to just getting by. Because as long as your life feels tolerable, you won't do what it takes to make it extraordinary. And that's how people spend decades stuck in lives they don't love, simply because it never got bad enough to change. But do you really want to wait for it to get worse before you decide you deserve better? Discomfort isn't your enemy. It's your compass. The areas of your life that make you uncomfortable are the ones begging for your attention. That job you can't stand. That financial stress that keeps repeating. That feeling that you're meant for more but not living it. These aren't signs that you're broken. They're signals that your life is out of alignment. And until you stop ignoring them, you will keep spinning in the same cycle, hoping for new results with the same thinking. You cannot escape a life you keep justifying. As long as you defend your limitations, you will never reach your power. As long as you keep saying, that's just the way I am, you will stay exactly where you are. Change doesn't happen when you want it. It happens when you decide that what you've been tolerating is no longer acceptable. That's when your life begins to shift, not in theory, but in action. Every time you let yourself off the hook, you teach your brain that quitting is acceptable, that procrastination is justified, that discipline is optional. But the problem is, Your brain is always watching, always recording. And over time, you don't just create habits, you create identity. You begin to believe the story you keep rehearsing, that you're inconsistent, that you never follow through, that you're not someone who wins. But that story is a lie. You were never weak. You were never unworthy. You just spent too much time feeding the version of you that gave up too easily, that ran from resistance. That's settled for average. But you don't have to keep feeding that version. You can kill it. Every single day you have the power to choose. Feed the future or feed your fears. Feed your power or feed your excuses. One path builds you. The other buries you. You weren't born to coast. You weren't born to settle for just surviving. You were built to rise, to dominate your space, to command your time, to lead yourself with power and clarity. But you cannot access that life while you're still entertaining the habits of someone who's okay with being stuck. The gap between who you are and who you want to be is built on decisions, not dreams, not potential, decisions. And the most powerful one is this: I will no longer be available for anything that doesn't move me forward. That means cutting out the noise. That means taking full control of your mental diet, what you watch, what you listen to, what you tolerate. That means creating structure even when no one's watching. That means getting uncomfortable on purpose, because that discomfort, that's growth trying to reach you. It's the call to stretch beyond who you were yesterday. And the more you answer that call, the more powerful you become. Not someday, but now. Every day, you're either strengthening discipline or strengthening distraction. You're either proving to yourself that your word means something or proving that it's just noise. And the world responds to the level of standard you set, not with your words, but with your actions. So if you're not where you want to be, don't look outward. Look inward. Look at the habits you've let slide. Look at the shortcuts you keep taking. Look at the truths you keep avoiding. Because the moment you decide to face them, the moment you take full ownership without flinching, that's the moment you become dangerous. That's the moment life begins to bend in your favor. Not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped playing small. You stopped chasing approval. You stopped trying to escape the work and instead leaned into it like someone who's finally ready to rise, ready to earn, ready to win, not because it's easy, not because it's guaranteed, but because you've made the one shift that changes everything, refusing to stay the same. And once you make that shift, the momentum is unstoppable. Once you step into that mindset where growth is non-negotiable and excuses are no longer welcome, everything around you begins to shift. Not because life suddenly gets easier, but because you get sharper. Your clarity gets stronger. Your standards get higher. Your tolerance for mediocrity drops to zero. And in that state, progress is no longer something you hope for. It's something you expect from yourself. Because you've stopped negotiating with weakness. You've stopped romanticizing comfort. You've stopped waiting for life to hand you permission. You've taken control. The people who win in life aren't always the smartest, the most connected, or the most talented. They're the ones who refuse to quit. They're the ones who keep showing up long after others get bored. They're the ones who keep growing when no one's watching. And the reason they keep rising isn't luck, it's discipline. Self-made people are just those who decided to keep building when it would have been easier to break. It's easy to want success when you're inspired. But what do you do when the excitement fades? When the results are slow? When no one claps, no one notices, and nothing seems to be changing? That's when most people retreat. That's when they look for comfort to replace consistency. That's when they decide maybe good enough is enough. But the few who keep pushing, the few who keep showing up with fire, even in silence, those are the ones who change everything. Not just for themselves, but for everyone who comes after them. And you have that within you. The ability to rebuild your mindset, to rewire your behavior, to break cycles that were never yours to carry. But it starts with one radical decision: to stop betraying your potential, to stop lying to yourself about how much time you have, to stop avoiding the work that would change your life simply because it's uncomfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. That's the price. That's the path. That's the proof you're on the right track. The world tries to sell you ease. It tries to convince you that success can be outsourced, that shortcuts will save you time, that hustle is old school. But here's the truth. Nothing lasting is ever built without effort. Nothing meaningful is ever created without cost. And if you keep searching for the easy road, you'll never get off the ground. You'll stay stuck in the loop of temporary fixes and long-term frustration. The hard road is where your character is formed. It's where your resilience is sharpened. It's where your grit becomes your advantage. Because once you've learned how to keep going when it's hard, there's nothing that can stop you when it gets easier. You stop being fragile. You stop being reactive. You become focused, intentional, dangerous to your limitations. That's what wealth requires. Not just financial intelligence, but emotional maturity. You need the emotional discipline to say no to what feels good now in favor of what builds the future. You need the maturity to choose the pain of discipline over the comfort of distraction. And most importantly, you need the self-awareness to confront your patterns before they destroy your potential. If you keep breaking promises to yourself, your confidence will die in silence. You may smile in public, but inside, you'll know the truth, that you're capable of more but still choosing less. And that truth doesn't go away. It follows you. It whispers in the quiet moments. It shows up when you see others winning and feel the sting of regret. But you can flip that right now. You can use that sting as fuel. You can use it as a reminder that you were meant to win. But you must rise to meet the version of yourself who does. It's not about doing everything at once. It's about doing the right thing every day. The small, powerful choices. Choosing focus when your mind wants to drift. Choosing discipline when comfort calls your name. Choosing movement when procrastination feels easier. These aren't massive, dramatic decisions, but they build something massive. They stack, they compound, and eventually they turn into momentum so strong it carries you through what used to break you. That's how empires are built. Quietly, consistently, without applause, until one day the results become too loud to ignore. So stop asking if you're ready. You'll never feel ready. No one does. But readiness isn't a feeling. It's a choice, a decision to act even when it's inconvenient, a decision to show up even when you're tired, a decision to build, to sacrifice, to focus, because the life you want demands nothing less. And when you stop waiting, when you start moving, you'll realize something powerful. Wealth was never about just money. It was about mastery, self-mastery, the ability to lead yourself no matter what life throws at you. That's what creates power. That's what builds legacy. And that's what you're capable of if you decide to stop holding back. Not someday. Now, you've been waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, the perfect level of confidence to begin. But the truth is, perfection is the lie that keeps people paralyzed. Waiting robs your future while disguising itself as preparation. The longer you wait, the louder your doubts grow. The more time you give fear to speak, the more control it takes. And the longer you listen, the more likely you are to settle. Because fear is patient. It doesn't need to win today. It just needs to delay you long enough to make you give up. But you don't have to keep letting fear write your story. You don't have to keep handing over your future to hesitation. At some point, you have to get tired of your own delays. You have to look at what your excuses have really cost you, not in theory, but in life. The missed opportunities, the wasted time, the energy spent pretending you're not ready when deep down you know you are. You always have been. But readiness doesn't come from waiting. It comes from moving anyway. Everything changes when you stop needing to feel brave and start acting like someone who's tired of being stuck. That's when you realize fear doesn't disappear, but it doesn't need to, because fear is not the problem. Your relationship with it is. When fear becomes your signal to pause, you stay stagnant. But when fear becomes your signal to lean in, to get focused, to grow, that's when you become unstoppable. You don't need to eliminate fear. You need to outgrow it. That happens when your purpose gets bigger than your pride. When your mission becomes louder than your insecurities. When you care more about building your future than protecting your ego. That shift is everything. Because once you're more committed to growth and comfort, the excuses that once stopped you lose their power. The stories you used to tell yourself start to sound ridiculous. And you begin to see excuses for what they are. Defense mechanisms for a version of you that no longer deserves control. You can't keep serving the old you and expect a new life. You can't keep feeding weakness and praying for strength. You can't keep showing up halfway and expecting full results. Life doesn't reward desire. It rewards discipline. And wealth doesn't show up for those who want it. It shows up for those who demand it through action, consistency, and relentless self-respect. Because that's what this is really about. Respecting yourself enough to keep your promises. To show up when no one's watching. To push when you don't feel like it. To grind even when it's not glamorous. Not because it's easy, not because it's fast, but because you told yourself you would. And when you start living like that, when your word becomes law in your own mind, you stop negotiating with weakness. You start building unshakable confidence, the kind that no setback can touch. The way you do one thing is the way you do everything. If you're careless with your time, you'll be careless with your money. If you break small commitments, you'll break big ones. If you let yourself slide on the little things, life will never trust you with the big ones. Wealth is earned through alignment. Through habits, through consistency that compounds while the rest of the world looks for shortcuts. You already have the blueprint. You already know what you need to cut out. The distractions, the toxic influences, the lazy mornings, the wasted evenings, the moments you trade for nothing in return. Deep down, you know what's hurting you. The question is, how long will you let it? How much of your life are you willing to trade for temporary comfort? How many goals will you bury under the weight of someday? How long will you keep playing small just to avoid being uncomfortable for a season? Because seasons pass. But regret lasts. You weren't given life to play it safe. You weren't built to hide your potential behind convenience. There's a fire in you that's been quiet for too long. Not because it died, but because you stopped feeding it. You gave more attention to doubt than to discipline, more energy to distractions than to purpose, more time to reacting than to building. And that's why you feel stuck. Not because you're weak, but because your focus is broken. Reclaim it. Decide right now that the future version of you is worth the price you have to pay today. That wealth, freedom, impact, those aren't just words you whisper when you're feeling inspired. They're outcomes that are earned by becoming someone who follows through no matter what. Someone who chooses hard now to live free later. Someone who's not just chasing success, but becoming the person success belongs to. Every second you waste is the second you steal from that version of you, the stronger you, the wealthier you, the freer you. And if you don't fight for that person, no one else will. So start now. No more delays, no more justifications, no more halfway habits. This is your time. This is your moment, and it won't wait forever. The clock isn't your friend. It's your mirror. Every second that passes is a reflection of the choices you've made. And while others waste time chasing distractions, escaping boredom, numbing discomfort, you have a choice to break the cycle. You have a choice to convert every wasted minute into a building block. Time doesn't pause for hesitation. It rewards movement. And the people who become rich in freedom, in purpose, in results, are not the ones who find more time, but the ones who take control of it. Control doesn't come from having everything figured out. It comes from owning your habits, from mastering your routines, from deciding what matters and ruthlessly eliminating what doesn't. You don't rise because you're lucky. You rise because your discipline becomes stronger than your distractions. Because your standards become louder than your feelings. Because you've learned to stop chasing the dopamine of short-term pleasure and instead build the muscle of long-term vision. Vision is what separates winners from wanderers. If you can't see past your current situation, you'll stay a prisoner to it. If you can't picture the life you want with clarity and conviction, you'll keep choosing the life that feels easiest now. But when your vision becomes vivid, when it's so real in your mind that it starts to change how you think, speak, and act, then your external world has no choice but to catch up. Reality follows the direction of your dominant thoughts. That's why it's not enough to want change. You have to think in alignment with it. You have to protect your mind like it's your greatest asset, because it is. Every rich person began by upgrading their inner world before their outer one. They stopped consuming things that fed fear. They stopped tolerating noise that bred confusion. They started feeding their minds with truth, with clarity, with principles that raise their expectations, because your life will always rise or fall to the level of your expectations. Expect little and you'll settle for less. Expect greatness and you'll begin to make decisions that match that standard. But expectations alone don't create success. Actions do. It's easy to dream big. But are you willing to do big? Are you willing to wake up earlier, stay up later, work when it's inconvenient, push when it's exhausting, and focus when everyone else is distracted? That's what separates you. Not talent, not luck, not background, or just the decision to move forward when most people stand still. Most people will never understand this level of intensity. They'll call it extreme. They'll say you're too obsessed, too focused, too disciplined. Let them. They don't have your vision. They don't carry your mission. They don't see what you see. And they're not the ones who will live your future. You are. So don't let their comfort steal your calling. Don't let their approval become more important than your own alignment. Their opinions won't build your future. Your actions will. Let that truth free you. Let it remind you that you don't need permission to change your life. You just need intention. You don't need applause. You need standards. You don't need to prove anyone wrong. You need to prove yourself right. Because at the end of the day, it's not about who believes in you. It's about what you believe when no one's watching. That's the belief that drives decisions. That's the belief that creates habits. That's the belief that builds wealth. Wealth doesn't chase you. It waits for who you're becoming. It waits for the version of you who no longer tolerates average, who shows up without needing motivation, who keeps promises without needing pressure, who takes action without needing a guarantee. That version of you already exists. But you won't find them in comfort. You'll find them in the struggle, in the silence, in the days you want to quit and decide not to. There is power in choosing to keep going when nothing around you says you should. Power in staying committed when results are invisible. Power in building without applause. Because those are the moments that define you, not the moments you post online, not the highlight reels, but the lonely, unglamorous hours where winners are built in the dark. You want to become rich? Then build a mindset so unshakable that nothing external can touch it. Create habits so consistent that success becomes inevitable. Cultivate discipline so deep that failure isn't the end, it's just feedback. This is the foundation, not luck, not comfort, control. Take it, own your mind, master your time. Strengthen your standards. Make your life a product of design, not default. And never again allow your feelings to decide your future. Your time is now, and the world won't wait. You were not born to repeat cycles. You were not created to follow the path of the majority, and you were never meant to live a life controlled by limitation. The moment you recognize that your future is shaped by what you tolerate, everything changes. Because what you tolerate becomes your standard, and what you allow becomes permanent. If you allow laziness, you become unreliable. If you allow procrastination, you become inconsistent. If you allow excuses, you become average. And average is the slowest form of failure because it disguises itself as not that bad. But you weren't built for not that bad. You weren't made for mediocrity. There's something in you that wants more. That's why comfort doesn't satisfy you. That's why playing small keeps you restless. That's why your goals don't leave your mind. They were placed in you for a reason, not to tease you, but to pull you toward discipline, toward discomfort, toward growth, because every goal you've ever had requires the death of who you've been. And most people will never change because they fear that death. They'd rather keep their old habits than risk their new future. They'd rather stay familiar than rise to the unfamiliar heights of greatness. But the truth is simple. Your old habits can't come with you. The part of you that wastes time, avoids pain, breaks promises, plays victim, that part of you is the cost. You don't become wealthy while still acting like the broke version of you. You don't create success with the mindset that created struggle. Transformation is not a one-time event. It's a daily decision to no longer be who you were. You cannot elevate your life without elevating your identity. And your identity is shaped by what you prove to yourself daily. Not what you hope for, not what you post about, what you do, what you refuse to compromise on, what you repeatedly choose when no one is watching. Your habits scream louder than your goals. Your consistency exposes your priorities. And your outcomes never lie. They reflect everything you believed and acted on up to this moment. So if the results aren't there, stop looking outside. Start looking inward. You don't need more tips, more tricks, more shortcuts. You need to raise your personal standard. You need to demand more from yourself in silence, in solitude, in the spaces where success is built long before it's seen. You need to become someone who refuses to be outworked, outfocused, or outlasted by their old self. That's what wealth respects. Not talk, not hype, but endurance. The willingness to show up over and over again, even when the process is invisible. Even when your efforts feel ignored. Even when it seems like nothing's moving. Because it is. Every disciplined day is moving you forward. Every moment you push instead of quit is building momentum. Every time you act without results is proof that you are no longer a slave to outcomes, but a master of habits. That kind of discipline is rare. That kind of hunger is rare. And that's why wealth is rare. Because most people won't pay that price. But you can. You don't need permission. You don't need applause. You need one decision: I will not go back. I will not keep playing at 50% and expecting 100% returns. I will not let fear make my choices. I will not let emotions lead my schedule. I will not let the person I was sabotage the person I'm becoming. Because every time you let your feelings win, you push your future further away. Every time you choose distraction over direction, you lose ground. Every time you say, I'll start tomorrow, you train yourself to believe that now doesn't matter. But now is all you'll ever have. Success is not made in some future fantasy. It's made in the choice you make right now to rise, to move, to commit, not later, not when it's easy, not when you feel like it, now. You've wasted enough time waiting for the perfect mindset. It's time to build it through action, through grit, through daily war with your old patterns. No more soft starts, no more shallow goals, no more lukewarm effort. You're either building your future or breaking it. Every decision adds up. Every excuse leaves a scar. And every day you let slip by is one more day you teach yourself to live beneath your potential. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be relentless. You need to keep going when it's boring, push when it's painful, focus when it's chaotic. You need to lead yourself when motivation disappears and become so consistent that success has no choice but to catch up. This is what separates those who wish from those who win. It's not talent. It's not timing. It's not who you know. It's who you decide to become when no one's watching and everything is on the line. And that decision is still in your hands.